If you struggle with anxiety, you've probably experienced a situation like this before. You're at work and you have a less than ideal interaction with your boss. You immediately start playing the situation back in your head to spot signals for what could have been wrong, and then you start envisioning being fired, having people dislike you, losing your livelihood, and your life falling apart. Now, while that rarely ends up being the case, it doesn't prevent us from thinking that in our head and going down these negative thought patterns. The good news is you're not alone. There's 301 million people worldwide that struggle with anxiety, myself included. And today we're going to break down the exact strategies I've learned over the last 6 years that have helped me unlock the secret to living a life with less anxiety. And the best benefit of all is understanding how to regulate our emotions so the next time a negative situation comes up, we're better able to handle it. The problem is everyone just tells us to relax. Stop thinking about it, don't worry about it, take this pill, meditate, and it'll all go away. That's rarely the case, and it's just a lack of understanding of people trying to give advice about something that they don't simply understand. But there is a set of strategies and tools we can use to mitigate anxiety, limit its impact on our lives, and break free from its constraints. So let's jump into it. The first strategy is the control exercise. This is my personal favorite, and it helps me eliminate a lot of worry and just genuinely not worry about anything that I can't control. And so how this works is you grab a piece of pen and a paper, write down every thought you're having about whatever situation you're concerned with. Circle the ones you can control and only focus on those. The reason it works? One, it forces you to put your worries into words. And once you do that and write them out, sometimes you realize how ridiculous they are. But if they're not ridiculous, it helps you identify which are the ones that are actually in your control. Although it's easier said than done, we should never worry about things that are not in our control. If you're worried about a hurricane happening, there's nothing you can do about a hurricane. But what you can do is you can prepare your house, you can board up the windows, you can buy some food, you can stock up on some supplies. Those are all things you can do to mitigate your anxiety, things that are directly in your control, and it will help you remove some of the stress around the hurricane coming that otherwise would cause you to be extremely concerned about what's going to happen. Another one of my favorites is if you're worried about creating some kind of change in your life. If you want to make more money, or if you're just genuinely unhappy and you want to see some change and you're worried about not being able to create that change, I find it's extremely useful to sit down with yourself for 30 minutes to an hour and write out, all right, I want to make more money. What are some of the things that I can control? I can apply to more jobs. I can update my resume. I can learn more skills. What I can't do is I can't worry about the economy, and I can't worry about if I'm going to get hit with extra bills. It's a balance between focusing on what we can control and realizing the things that are out of our control, and focusing our time and energy on the things that we can take to help mitigate the bad situation and relieve some mental stress. If you're worried about something, the quickest way to cure your anxiety about it is to take action on things you can control. This is the quickest way to get your brain to stop racing and thinking about things that might eventually happen. The second exercise is the inverse strategy. This is simply flipping the script on all your negative thoughts. A lot of times, people like us with anxiety, we tend to immediately have negative racing thoughts. It'll be like, what if this goes wrong? What if this person says that? What if this happens? What if I can't get myself out of this situation? All these are negative situations that could happen, but there's an equal chance that the positive version of it will happen. So in life, there's an equal chance of good and bad happening. It could be a bad outcome, it could be a good outcome, but there's a 50-50 chance it's going to be one or the other. You can simply use what Mel Robbins calls the 5-second rule, which is just pause when you're having a negative thought and think about the complete opposite of that situation. So if you're worried about losing your job, you could think about you have an equal chance of getting promoted. Realistically, both of those things have an equal chance of happening, and how you act can help bring about one of those situations. Simply just thinking about the inverse of what you're worrying about and understanding it has an equal chance of happening is a great way to help calm down the negative racing thoughts that we often experience, and realize that just as much as we're obsessing over the negative, there's an equal chance that we could obsess over the positive, and that also could happen. The third strategy is cognitive distortions. These are psychological traits that cause you to perceive the world in an irrational way. They're just thought patterns that make us perceive things not in reality. So some of the most common ones are polarized thinking, which is basically when you only think of the world in binary extremes. So it's either always good or it's always bad. We're always making money or we're never going to make money. And in reality, the world is not that binary. There's a spectrum that you would fall on. There's a spectrum to wealth. There's a spectrum to success. There's a spectrum of health. There's a spectrum of wealth. There's a spectrum of happiness. In reality, you will fall on that spectrum somewhere. It might be closer to one extreme or the other, but the world does not work in these very black and white very binary decisions that we often create in our head, where we're either successful or we're not, or we're either a failure or we're not. It's not the way that the world works. And so recognizing when you're thinking in this binary and this polarized way can help you break out of it by just simply recognizing, okay, I'm engaging in polarized thinking. I need to just get myself out of that headspace. A second cognitive distortion is mental filtering. This is also referred to as self-fulfilling prophecies. If I told you to look around your room right now and only look for things that are in black, you'll scan the room and you'll probably come back with a bunch of black objects. If I asked you to name everything that was red in the room, you probably wouldn't be able to do that. And the reason is I told you to focus on things that are in black. And the problem is, when you do that, you're conditioning your brain to only look for those types of things, only look for those types of situations. The same applies to your life. If you're only looking for the negative, you will more likely find negative situations, and you'll actually bring about those negative situations. If you're able to focus more on positive things, you'll notice more positive things, you'll be more grateful, and you'll be in a more relaxed headspace because you're noticing the positive and you're not always focusing on the negative. The reason they're called self-fulfilling prophecies is because the more you focus on something, the more you create those outcomes. And there's a bunch of studies that support this. I'll link down to them in the description, but the general gist is that the more you focus on something, the more likely it is to happen. So if we switch that to focusing on positives, we'll notice more positives, and stop focusing on negatives and you'll notice less negatives. And the third one that's very popular is jumping to conclusions. This is when you take one action or one situation and immediately draw 2, 3, 4, or 5 order consequences of that action out in your head, and you create all these timelines. That's how we started the video, talking about having a bad interaction with someone. You worry about what could have gone differently, what did you do, now they're not going to be your friend anymore. These are all situations that you'll play in your head, but it's called jumping to conclusions because that's what you're doing. You're taking an initial action and immediately assuming that these are the outcomes that are going to happen because of that. So again, just by recognizing cognitive distortions, you are better equipped to avoid these situations and generally just cut them off before they even start going in your head. And now those are all the strategies we can use to mentally get ourselves out of a negative space. I'm going to talk on some biological things that I've done. A lot of these are coming from Dr. Huberman, so I'm going to credit him with that. But the main one that I use is the double inhale, exhale. So it's when you take one very deep breath and then add a second one on top of that. It looks something like that. Added breath releases a lot of the carbon dioxide that's in your lungs and in your brain. And for those of you who aren't aware, a buildup of carbon dioxide in the brain is what actually leads to more and more anxiety. So the more carbon dioxide you have, the more anxiety you feel. And that's why when you hyperventilate, you're not getting rid of enough carbon dioxide, and it just is a cycle that makes the anxiety worse and worse and worse, and your breathing patterns worse and worse. So the double inhale is something that I've used to immediately calm you down. If you do this for like 30 to 60 seconds, you'll see a baseline decrease in your levels of anxiety. And this is on a biological level as well as a psychological level. So not only will you feel less stressed, you'll also think less negative thoughts, if that makes sense. So that's one that I use pretty frequently because you can just do it the moment you're feeling anxious and it'll immediately relieve those negative feelings. The next one is daily exercise. Obviously, everyone knows if you exercise, you feel better. But if you are able to exercise, at least 5 days a week, and by exercise, it can be just a walk. I'm not talking about going to the gym or running a 5K, like simply going on a 20 to 30 minute walk every single day. Over the course of weeks to months, you will notice a general decrease in your anxiety levels. And the reason for this is as long as we go on a 10-minute longer walk, your brain activity skyrockets. And it's good types of brain activity. It's a type of brain function that eliminates negative thoughts. It opens up your dopamine and your serotonin receptors. Generally, it just releases a ton of neurotransmitters that are the antidotes to anxiety. And these are just natural remedies that will help you eliminate baseline levels of anxiety from your day-to-day as long as you do them. So for me, I noticed that after doing daily walks for about 2 weeks is when I saw the biggest increase. I also go to the gym and lift weights, and that also helps as well. So if you want to do strength and resistance training, you can pair that with it as well. But getting some kind of daily exercise in dramatically improves your physiological systems to reduce anxiety. And the third one is a diet change. So this is one that I only found out recently, and I cannot preach it enough to everyone that's struggling with focus or anxiety. If you feel like you can't focus or you feel like you're stressed on a daily basis, if you cut out all the sugar in your diet and double the protein, you will see an immediate relief in those symptoms. You'll be able to focus better and you'll notice yourself stressing less and feeling less anxious. The general notion is that sugar spikes your dopamine. It releases a lot of neurotransmitters in your brain, which are the natural antidotes to feeling stressed, which is why people binge eat when they're not feeling good or they're feeling extra stress from work or life situations. They eat more because it releases dopamine and it calms down their nerves. But the same applies on a daily basis. Even if you're not feeling stressed about a particular thing, if you eat a lot of sugar, you're going to be on this emotional roller coaster that will affect your ability to regulate your emotions and calm down, or for you to get into a focused state to be able to do more work. So that's another one. And by just upping the protein is a natural way to increase your focus and not eat as much sugar and to not be hungry as often, which will also help you not be stressed. And so those are all the strategies and tools that I've used over the last 6 years that have greatly helped me deal with anxiety. I do want to touch on the mindset you have to be able to actualize some of this change and to carry it to success. And so some of the parting thoughts I want to leave you with are the following. This is a process. It will take time. It's the same way when you work out a muscle. It's going to take time and training to get yourself into the headspace of noticing these negative thoughts, getting outside every day for some exercise, going on a walk, eating better, recognizing the negative thought patterns, recognizing your cognitive distortions. These are all going to take time, but it's a process. And the great thing about process is it gets better with time. So the longer you engage in a process, the longer you engage in training yourself, the better you're going to get, the faster you're going to get at it, the more effective you're going to get at it. The biggest component is time. This took me, years and years to do. I'm condensing all that knowledge down into this video, but it will take you weeks to apply these. And that's a good thing, because if it was simple and easy, it wouldn't be that effective. But these are extremely effective and they take a few weeks to kick in. But I promise you that if you're able to stick with it, you will see these results. And the most vital thing to understand about anxiety is that it never fully goes away. There is no secret to living without anxiety because everyone has anxiety. It's natural. It's what keeps us alive. It's what keeps us alert. But some of us are burdened with extreme levels of anxiety. And that's what the secret is. We can minimize those extreme levels. And the way to do that is simply recognizing it, spotting it, and engaging in the tools we discussed in this video to cut them off. Anxiety is a culmination of thoughts and patterns and behaviors that lead to negative feelings, whether it's physical or psychological or both. And the way that we get at them is just cutting them off. If you cut off those negative thoughts, if you cut off those negative emotions, they have less of a chance of getting to the point of causing real harm in your life. And so that's why I just always like to remind people that it's a game of minimizing. It's not a game of eliminating, because you will be anxious. You will feel negative emotions. They're what keep us alive. It's what used to keep us alive from predators. When we were hunter and gatherers, it goes back. It's wired into our DNA. It's wired into our brains. You'll never be able to fully eliminate it, but you can mitigate it, and you will mitigate it by applying the principles from this video. For any of you there that are really struggling with anxiety, I want to just tell you that I have been there and I have experienced what you're going through. And how you feel today is not how you will feel every day, and it's not how you're going to feel for the rest of your life. I know that that's how it feels in the moment. You feel so caught up in the emotions and you're unable to see the light, and everything feels like it's falling apart, and you just don't understand how you're ever going to not feel this way. But I promise that you will get out of this. There is more and better opportunities on the other side of these negative thoughts, and how you feel today is not how you'll feel forever. That's it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Comment down below, what are some things you're worrying about? Are you using any of the tactics above? Have you found any success with them? I would love to hear from you guys, and I hope to see you on the next video. Peace.